Welcome to another episode of People of Penang Podcast, where we talk with real people.
And today is one of our series, special series on World Religion Day. And we have someone from the Bahá'í community, Segran.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure because I can tell by your vibe before we started the podcast that this is going to be, you're a friendly guy. I had to open a saying, and I'm really looking forward to this because I have a lot of questions.
Oh, wait. Send me your questions.
Because honestly, I've been very curious about the Bahá'í religion in a sense where what I found most intriguing was the world citizen concept, where everyone who was a Bahá'í would have this idea that borders are a man-made thing and that everyone is a citizen of the world in a sense, So I kind of thought like, wow, that's a religion that had the idea of globalization almost before globalization.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Actually, that's true. I think from its inception, the teachings of the faith embraces this idea that the earth is but one country and mankind is citizens, right? So that's one of the founding concepts with faith. And so you're right. You speak to any Baha'i anywhere in any corner of the world, and you'll find the common vision this washes right through.
But okay, what can you educate me more on the faith structure and stuff like this? I do notice that there is a lot of emphasis on work and intellectuality, if that makes any sense. Where some expressions of faith are more spiritual, some are more ceremonial, but it seems that the Baha'i is more of, I don't know, the modern work ethic is the right way to put it, but you know what I mean. It's like it's one of those religions where like you go out there, you build something.
That's right.
Maybe another way of saying is maybe it talk about how the Bahá'í views work.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good observation. Work is important to the Baha'i faith because it equates that with worship. So it is worship. In it's one expression of worship. To take a piece of paper and make the best out of it is an expression of one's. In the writings, it explains it's an expression of one's potential. And not only are you perfecting something that's been created already, but giving it a higher form. And by in doing so, you are also achieving your potential. So whenever there's a strive towards excellence, it is seen as fulfilling the capacity. And so you find that common idea among Baha'is, I'm sure many spiritual traditions as well, of making something better, leave something better than when you found it. Those kind of ideas are quite common in the Baha'i faith. And so when you hear something like work is worship, and service is prayer, it starts to make sense.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept for me because obviously my experience of faith is from a different lens. So that's one of the reasons why I'm enjoying this podcast, and also at the same time the things that you've achieved. Because like I was reading your profile, everything from sailor astronomer, and you talked about that on the podcast, and you were showing me some of your footages that you shot on the drone. Was that part of your expression of faith, or was that just a win-win scenario where you definitely had the passion, but it also supported your faith?
Another big question.
I told you I had a lot of thought about this.
No, it's true. I think it does elevate one's. I think we all have this innate need to explore, discover, to make things better, and that's just built in. And I think that's the way we are designed, created. And so when we walk the path to want to do that, and you find resources and the support system that allows you to explore and make things better, you just naturally, you walk the path, right? So for me personally, it's like, I started early in my years right after high school. I wanted to see the world because I had a great geography teacher. Okay, we love this guy, and he was so good in describing the different climates and different landscapes of the world, the different cultures. So I was sitting there and I've got to see this for myself, man. I got to go and explore. And right after high school, there was an ad on the newspaper that said, "Come see the world." Joined the merchant marine in Singapore. And so I did. I signed up. I got the job. And next thing I knew, I was flying out to Bangkok for a boy who never left Penang. his whole life.
Oh, wow.
And there I was, and I had just become a Baha'i months prior to that, having investigated the faith. And one of the things in the writings of the faith, it says that, again, earth about one country and mankind its citizens. And there are many other quotations that refer to the unity that's essential. Because, one of the key principles in the Baha'i faith is the oneness of mankind. And while I had investigated the faith when I was in Penang as a teenager, I was surrounded by Baha'i friends and community who showed those qualities. But then my question was, is it true across the world, or is it just a unique situation in Penang? So when I started sailing, and it was, I went to a whole bunch of countries, in fact, literally around the world a couple of times. And wherever I would land, those days you didn't have cell phones. So you would go to the nearest phone booth, drop in a coin, what that feels like. Look at the yellow pages, Baha'i. Oh, there is one here.
For our younger listeners, there was a time when there was a thing called phone numbers. It was printed on a book, and occasionally we use it to wrap kacang putih.
I've always found it ironic that people are so concerned about their data. When in the yesteryears, it was like a whole book which had your whole information, your phone number, your address.
And we demand, put it there. How much I got there?
How are people going to find me? Oh, wow. Sorry, we're off tangent, but that's hilarious, though.
Yeah. So I would call them up, and then, sometimes within hours, maybe the following day, they would show up, right at the dock where the ship is tied up, and I'm either loading or discharging cargo, and they would show up. And then there I was with a family. I could be in Norfolk, Virginia. I could be in, New Guinea, not New Guinea, I think it was called the West Africa, which is an African state, a country. And there, in a village, they took me back to the home in these huts and all that, and there were a group of Baha'is and speaking the same language. Earth is but one country, welcome, right? Oh my God. And I thought, so they actually meant what they said. It wasn't just a nice idea, but they lived it, Same thing in Australia, wherever I was, I would call up. So as a young Baha'i, it was just 18, 19 at the time, to go through that realization that this was not just a nice concept, but they actually meant it.
And so you're really checking out whether the world is walking.
Yeah, exactly. And it sure felt like one.
I think very few people actually to go sail just check it out.
But
Next level of commitment.
But that's also a beautiful thing to find, because I think it's like how when people say you never meet your heroes because of the disappointment, right? Yeah. So it's almost a similar situation, although the hero in this case obviously is it's an article of faith, But it's good to hear that.
So it's generally the faith is spread around the world.
Oh, pretty much, yeah. I think I don't know what the latest count, but in the I believe in the Encyclopedia Britannica, it states that it's the second most widespread faith in the world after Christianity. Geographic is not in terms of numbers, but in terms of the geographic spread. So every island you can think of, every desert or whatever, someone is there who's a Baha'i or a community is there.
Do you happen to know the origins of it? I mean, that's where I'm a little bit hazy in my knowledge. With the Baha'i, how did it start?
Yeah. So the faith, so there was this massive messianic fervor at the turn of the 19th century, early 1800s, in fact, late 1700s. And many religious groups around the world had this clarity that something important religiously is about to happen, but many couldn't pinpoint. Some managed to. For example, the Templars, the German Templars, they sold their properties and their homes and everything else, and figured out from calculations in their prophecies in the Bible that somehow the promised one would appear in the Holy Land near Mount Carmel. So they settled at the foot of the mountain. This was in late 17, early 1800s. And they built a community there. And it's likewise in different parts of the world, in China, in India, in the US back then, there was a fervor. There were, when you think of the Seventh-day Adventist movement, church today, it came out of that fervor during the time, because a lot of scholars looked at the numbers in the Bible and in different religious traditions, and they said, it's about to happen. I think God's about to speak to us again, and we need to prepare ourselves. So during that time, there were all these different searches going on in the investigations. There's one particular group in Persia, in Shiraz, Iran today. There was a group of young men who was doing the same thing. They were going through 40 days of fasting and cleansing themselves because they felt the arrival of the promised one was imminent.
Maybe just for context, because the world has changed a lot since then. It's part of the Ottoman Empire.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
So there's not really those states that were named. Yeah.
You can put it in a context. Ottoman Empire.
The Ottoman Empire was huge, as were the Russians, and So at that time, Persia was an independent country, right? It wasn't under the Ottoman Empire, but other parts around there were. And so in Persia, there was this, again, the same kind of fervor. And these young men went on a quest to look for the promised one. And one of them was led by, call it destiny, fate, or his earnest search to a town called Shiraz. And there he meets this young merchant, a 25-year-old merchant, who walks up. They have these city gates those days. I think they still do in Iran. There's this classical design of a huge entrance to a city, right? And so he was approaching the city, walking all the way from what today would be Iraq, but those days, Najaf and Karbala and those holy places. He left there. He was heading towards Shiraz on foot. Finally arrives there, disheveled and tired and dusty. And this young man says to him, "Hey, why don't you come to my home and freshen up?" Oh, and so this guy goes, "Okay, young man, who are you?"
I would be weirded out too. I don't disagree.
Why are you here to welcome me, and how did you know I was coming? Anyway, so and then he says to him, "I would love to, but I've got my other companions that I need to meet up with them at the mosque because I promised to meet them." And this young man who spoke in a very gentle voice struck the other young man who was searching for him and searching for the promised one at the time. He didn't know it was him, but he said to him in a very gentle and compelling tone. And when I read about it, I said, how does one combine those two contradictory qualities? Gentle, soft tone, yet compelling. In a compelling tone, he says to him, "No, come to my place and you'll be fine." Right? And he didn't know how to say no at that point. He tried no the first time.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so he goes with this young man to his house. They walk through this narrow, bizarre street, arrive at the door, and then, they open the door, they go upstairs, and this host, this young man, the merchant, starts to wash the dust off his feet and serves him drink, and they sit down and have a chat, and what happens there is the time for evening prayer comes up, and they pray together. And then after the prayer, he sits down, and then the host asks him, "What is the intent of your journey? Why are you here in Shiraz?" And so this man, this seeker says to him, "Well, I'm on a quest to find the promised one, which my teacher," because he had his own teacher and had said that, would be appearing anytime, and we are prepared for this search. And then this host says to him, "What are the signs that you're looking for in this person?" "Wow, I'm sure you'll give him some signs. What are the signs?" And this young man says, "Well, the signs are this." He gets a series of requirements that the promised one is supposed to meet, among them the age and innate knowledge, not acquired knowledge, and things like that. And he himself had made a whole list of questions to ask him anyway, because he wanted to be sure that if he ever found this promised one, that he fulfills all these criteria, right? And one of those questions he had there was that that if you found the promised one, he would, among many things, unasked, reveal to you a chapter from the Quran and give you the explanation for the chapter known as the Surah of Joseph. Oh, it's very specific. Very specific. Of all the books. And so had he answered the initial questions, now this host, eventually history knows him as the Bab, which means the gate in Arabic. So the Bab turns to him and he says, "Now it's time for me to reveal the surah, the commentary on the Surah of Joseph." And so this young man, his name was Mullah Hussein, the speaker, and he goes, "Okay." So yeah, sure. And he starts the commentary, starts up in the evening, it goes all the way till morning. It becomes the first chapter of his holy book. And so, anyway, long story short, this young man, this seeker, Mullah Hussein, he says, that night his sleep left me, and he says he felt possessed of such power just hearing the intonation of the words that were coming out, because the young man was writing as he spoke, and it turns to no stopping, no editing, no cancelling and changing and erase, none of that. It just flowed, and it became the first chapter of what eventually became one of his several holy books. But that night was special to him. Now, what's interesting is that very night was May 23rd, 1844. Right across the Pacific Ocean, of the Atlantic Ocean, on the other side, the east coast of the U.S., Samuel Morse was sending this first ever message across, from, I think it's Philadelphia to some other part of the U.S. I forget. And
telegraph.
The telegraph,
Okay.
right? It was
Hence the Morse code.
exactly. And the message that he sent to the other person who received it was, "What has God wrought?"
It's a quote from the Bible.
Of all the things,
Yeah, to say,
I thought it'd be like hello.
right? You'd say, "Hello, hi, is this working?"
Yeah, testing 1, 2, 3.
So that was bursting. Anyway, there are many other symbols and signals. But anyway, that was the birth of the faith for the Baha'is. And the Bab was a forerunner who eventually was killed, was martyred by the forces of the time, because they see him as a troublemaker, because he was creating a new kind of belief system within a community, right?
What year is this?
1844.
Of course.
This is like our previous guest, but they talk about the moment the Sikh faith was. This is like that moment, right? Yeah, where it becomes an actual thing of its own.
A singular moment. So Baha'is around the world, every year on 23rd May, we celebrate this declaration as a Bab. So no matter where you are, how many generations later, you can always trace your line of connection back to that singular night, because that's where it began.
That's one.
Right.
Was it just the Morse code, or was it just serendipitously a whole bunch of things happened at that moment where it...
That's what we know.
Yeah.
And we, anecdotally, you hear other things around the world, but documented, that would be one of those.
So that'd be the most...
I think it was discovered after that. It's just a coincidence. Or less by day.
Exactly. But then again, I'm a person that believes in faith. So I mean, like I said, my experience of faith is from a different lens, but that lens also includes faith.
Yeah. So for people like this, tell me it's a coincidence. Okay, yeah, sure.
That's how I was like, sure. I do genuinely believe there's no such thing as coincidence, and genuinely, like in my heart, not a superficial.
What's actually the name Bahá'í mean? And a lot of people seem to think it's from India.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes the life infusion, because the word Bahá'í means a follower of Baha, which means glory. And that is taken from the name of the founder of the faith, Baha'u'llah, which means the glory of God. So the glory of God is the name of the founder. That's the one that the Bab came to foretell. So the Bab really came to prepare the way. His ministry is only 6 years long before he was killed. As he said, I just came to prepare the way for the one who would be made manifest. Him whom God shall make manifest. Oh, that's the word.
He was a herald.
So he was a herald, kind of like John the Baptist, right? For Christ, in the similar way. And John the Baptist was killed as well, right? But here, same thing.
See quite the trend here. Yes. Quite the trend.
Heralds, eh? So he loosened up society to encourage them to look at prophecy with a different eye. Because when you take it literally, the reason Jesus was crucified, because the Jews took the promise of the approach of the promised one to be literal.
Yes.
He's supposed to come through the cloud with an army of angels and things like that. And here was a carpenter's son.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, I'm the son of God. And they went, no, you're not. Right. So similarly, with the Bab, that, when religion can only be preached by the scholars on the religious, religious leader, right? Exactly. And here was a 25-year-old merchant. Come on, Paul. Merchants don't talk about religion. No, what I mean, he just wonders now. So they actually looked down on him, and so he says, it's not for you, Nick. I mean, who is selected, right? Who's appointed for the role? But he came in prepared, knowing he would be killed. One of the earliest verses to his wife, it says, he writes a prayer for her, and that is revealed that he would be taken. He knew that right away as he prepared his mission. But even as a child, all of them have amazing qualities. really and capacities. You hear about not so much about childhood of Jesus, but there are some stories. Same thing with the prophet Muhammad, and you get same stories of all these great founders. The capacity is later until the moment they decide to announce, and usually it's through a symbolic event that happens, spiritual event that has symbolic markers, and like the dove descending on Jesus and so on. And the Bab and Baha'u'llah had similar experiences after which they announced their mission, right?
Just a question. You seem to have read a lot. Is it, as a faith, you apply any of the principles in your work?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. You seem to have a read a lot.
No, that's a good question.
Is it part of the?
Yeah, I think there is the generally accepted, idea that you try to have a religion because you want to say that you have a belief system that kind of guides you, that you subscribe to. Or sometimes you hear people say, I just want a religion because I just want to. No.
I'll be honest with you, and I don't know if I should say this, but those people tend to annoy me because I'm just like, what? I'm sorry. Yeah. Because for me, it's like when it comes to religion and faith, that's something I take quite seriously. So those who just like, oh, just choose anyone's like, this is not about faith. This is not about faith, good sir.
Exactly. So what I find refreshing here is that the teachings of the faith are not just nice concepts, but one is asked to live those principles. So almost as important as as a prayer is, practice is, of those religious practices, so is the equal importance given to practicing those values and virtues that the religion teaches. Honesty, kindness, love, cooperation, unity are great concepts. Everybody agrees to that, right? Conceptually, all humans agree to that. The only difference is we stop at agreeing, but where's the action? Right? And it is when we act upon these attributes, actually, the Baha'is call them attributes of God. I think the similarity in most religions, the 99 names of God, right?
Oh, yes.
So kindness, love, and all these things are there. And they're like the sun. The ray is not, you cannot divorce the ray from the sun. So there is God and there is attributes like the rays, and they reach us. And what we decide to do with that is an individual's choice. The free will comes in. If you decide to practice it at work, in your business, in your day-to-day life at home, that is a choice we have to make. So the more we practice them, the more naturally they come to us, and then the reverberations in society goes out, right, from the family, and then we start affecting, show kindness to someone, and that goes out further and further, and then it starts to affect society, just like prayer does in a metaphysical sense. Now, in the practical sense, putting into practice these attributes of God that we all have receptacles for, we receive them, but then whether we act on them is another question. Or when we choose to act on them.
This is like what our previous guest saying, it's the Harjit said, it's the action, not just words thing.
Yeah, true. But to the heart of it, yeah. But so I'm going to ask him more about, because the thing is, this is coming from my own personal experiences with faith and religion, and I know one can never be perfect, and my relationship with religion is complex, say the least. So this comes from not alone. So when I ask this question, I want you to know it's not like to put you on the spot. It's like human to human. Have you ever gone to a point in your life where you realize that, yeah, this is it. This is the faith. And after that, was it at any point when that was shaken? And how did you move through that? Because for me, religion and faith feels more like a journey rather than a tattoo or brand. Absolutely. That's the best way.
Great question and a great
exclamation point. But like I said, I'm correlating it with my whole personal experience. It's not coming from anywhere of malice. It's just like, I go through it. Do you do too?
Oh yeah. I think most honest human beings would say yes, because it's designed to be that way. I think tests are essential for growth, right? So, it's woven into design, into creation. You take a look at a seed. You can take a nice little seed, give it on the desk, nice and polished, looking clean, put the light on it, looks great, never reaches the potential to be a plant and a tree. Now, it needs to go through test, pain, suffering, sacrifice, whatever you choose to call. It needs to bury itself in the cold, dark earth. No fun. After some time, it starts to crack up. Pain. You go through those processes so that the potential is then released. And it goes into the seedling, then to a plant, into a tree eventually. I think there's a similarity drawn into human lives. There is Baha'u'llah's oldest son, who was his appointed interpreter of his writing, and his successor after he passed away, said that this physical reality, he says, is a facsimile of a higher reality. So he says the spiritual reality is fundamental, it's real, it's reflected here through the coming together of elements and everything else, and that's a facsimile. And he says there's a reason for it. He calls it a metaphorical expression of a higher reality. So when you talk about kindness, kindness is expressed through human beings, through the application of the consciousness, their mind, and directing the body towards an act of kindness. Right? That whole process started from a spiritual foundation. Right? It finds its reality here, and then it becomes converted. And so he says that the physical reality is like a lab, like a growth space for human beings to go through so that we can understand that higher reality, which you cannot use words to describe those because they are not made of matter. So
Well, it's just like how we can't describe what six-dimensional... What is a tesseract that we know? I can't choose the language. But, actually, I just realized there's a lot of commonality between spirituality, religion, and concepts of dimensions in science.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of science, you seek to use a more scientific language when speaking about this. Can you explain the relationship of the faith with science?
Oh, absolutely. That's a good question. I mean, fundamentally, in the writings we are told that science and religion are actually one. That the separation that happens is basically due to our lack of understanding of either. Right? So when we hear that in the earlier you mentioned something about investigation and searching, and that's also fundamental to the Baha'i faith. One of the principles is that independent investigation of truth is essential. Essential in the Baha'i faith. It's a fundamental principle and one of the foundations of the faith. So no one automatically becomes a Baha'i just because you're born to a Baha'i family. At the age of 15 and above, you're required to make your own decision. Of course, your parents guide you.
You're not born into it like how most religions are.
Well, not technically. Of course, you're born in a Baha'i family. The job of parents is to guide you and give you comparative religion. So you understand various religions because, we believe in what is known as progressive revelation. The different faiths came at different times in human history to help us move along. Interesting, right? So if that's the case, then the parents would tell the child that that's the nature of religion as we understand it. Now, you need to make a decision when you turn 15 or above with your own investigation, right? So many children do when they turn 15 or 16 or 17, they say, yep, I accept the faith, and it's made known. But then it doesn't mean you're forced to becoming a Baha'i. The moment you're born, you have to make the decision.
Yeah.
Because that is a gift that's given to us, a gift called free will. Right? If you don't exercise it, then you're not exercising the gift that's been given to you. Right? So you make the choice. And so coming back to question of science is that is part of the equation, right? With science, what happens is, because we are told that science and faith are like two wings of a bird, right? You try slapping with the wings of just science alone, it leads towards materialism. It leads towards, materialism and excesses, right? Now, if you flap with just the wing of religion alone, you tend to spiral into dogma and superstition.
Yeah, as we can see.
Right? And because you don't match faith with reason. And what you have in the is just, don't do that. Why? Because I said so. Because the prophets say so. But prophets never just leave you with a statement. They give explanations. Yeah, you always do. Or we fail to explain them and just go with the headline.
No context, right? That's what annoys me as well. Sometimes when you you consult someone in a position of spiritual power, it's more ego than anything else. Like, because we can get into the conversation after the podcast, but in general, let's just say at some point I wasn't a good student, so to speak. I would always question, and I was always put me on the spot. And I see quite a few fluster because I ask hard questions, because I really want to know.
That's It comes from the place. And I feel it to being here in this podcast that the questions you guys are posing it's from a place of sincerity and wanting to know. And I think that's what makes the difference, right?
Yeah.
And really, that's at the end of the day, that's what we ought to be trying to, even with our friends and our general relationships, is to seek the truth.
So, like our previous guests, they share, like, we as People of Penang Podcast, we just want to focus on the people. So, like our previous guest, he runs a temple, a gurdwara. What is like in the life of a Baha'i? Let's just say in a typical, let's say week, maybe like Christians, maybe they have every Sunday something. What's Baha'i temple of life like? What happens as an individual life?
Very interesting question. The community social part of living the Baha'i life, right? So you have there is the Baha'i calendar to begin with. It is 19 months of 19 days, which is like what? It adds up to 300 months of 19 days each, so that adds up to 361 days. And then you have 4 days left in our journey around the sun, and those are known as intercalary days. So it'll be 4 or 5 depending on if it's a leap year. So it's a very interesting number. And every 19 days, the Baha'is meet every month, Baha'i month, for a feast, right? So wherever the community is, could be a small community in a village somewhere in Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea, or in Sydney, doesn't matter. But Baha'is, wherever they have a community, they gather and they go through this feast. The feast has certain parts to it. You start with devotionals and prayers, and then you go through reports on the local, institutions. And then you have consultation within the community on subject matters that matter to the community. And then you have a social. You get together and enjoy, even if it's just a cup of water. Well, usually it's often that, but yeah, we get together and socialize and get to know each other better. And sometimes we study certain messages, like messages from our supreme body, which is a universal house of justice, and or the local national body or local institutions. So that is one part of the rhythm on the Baha'i life. And then the whole, variety of events and activities and gatherings. A lot of them are focused towards service, to be service oriented. The idea is that, it's putting into practice the attributes of God and let the good reverberations go out and hopefully influence society towards a more gentle, loving, caring society. Because we all have the capacity for this. Sometimes we surprise ourselves with our capacity for goodness because we assume ourselves, for whatever life circumstances have brought us, we think, I'm not that good a person. We underestimate ourselves until we see our own goodness in action and someone else acknowledging that. And then you go, wow, I didn't know I was capable of that.
Or maybe the other end, we know how we're capable of great evil too. Sorry.
No, absolutely.
That's my biggest fear as a human being. I think the darker elements of my own self scares me.
Yeah, it makes any sense. I appreciate the honesty. I think we all had that. If you ask ourselves this question, we all have a capacity for great good and great evil, right? And it comes down to this question, really, in my opinion, is that how well nourished is our higher reality? I was having a session with a group of youth a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking them this simple question. I asked them, do you consider yourself a spiritual being, right? How many of you, in like the whole room, everybody's hand went up. And then I asked the same question, but I broadened it and I said, what percentage of humanity do you think considers itself spiritual?
Oh, wow. Right? Snap. Okay.
Right. And so I had people saying, giving all kinds of numbers. There was no pattern to it. It's just a broad range from, 80% to like, I don't know, look at the world today, maybe 10%, right? So that the perceptions vary. Then put the results of the collection of a bunch of surveys that show about 80 to 84% of human beings,
4%.
80 to 84% of human beings consider themselves spiritual.
Oh my God! I thought in 2020 that is a lot higher than
There's something.
yeah.
So I asked them, I said, why do you think this is? Okay, we had a good conversation around it. Why do you think this is? The people generally, they may not be religious or overtly, practicing whatever they believe in, but they see themselves as spiritual beings.
Yeah.
Anyway, what came out of the conversation there's a lot of good discussion. What came out of it is this common understanding that we identify that we have a higher reality. We're not just the components of our biology, as the combination of our material self. We are more than that. So we recognize that. Then the question is, so what are we doing about it? We know what to do with the material self. When you get sick, you go to a doctor. When you're hungry, you eat. When you gain too much weight, you try to go on a diet, which doesn't work half the time, right? So we get all the stuff that happens. But we all recognize we have a higher reality, which kind of tracks what Abdul Baha was saying earlier when he said that facsimile of a higher reality. So our higher reality exists. In many traditions, when someone passes away, we say he's gone.
Who is Abdul Baha?
Abdul Baha is the son of Baha'u'llah, I mentioned earlier.
Oh, okay.
The covenant.
Okay.
Right, yeah. And so he, in one of these writings, he said, even Baha'u'llah talks about it too, quite clearly in many places, that our true nature, our true reality is our spirit, our soul, or people use different terms, but there is a higher reality that's not bound by time and space. It's not made of elements. So it cannot decompose like our bodies will. Right? The body is just like a mirror, and the soul is like a light. Right? So if this for the time that we are here, that light is reflected in this body. But if the mirror is covered by dust and self and ego, that light's not going to shine. So if we can find ways to cleanse it, let the light shine for as long as it can, and then it is doing, it's fulfilling its purpose, and so is the mirror. At some point, this mirror is going to disintegrate. It's going to break. It's going to die.
Doesn't affect the light. Do you think this spiritual awareness that 85% of the human populace believes in or feels is true is correlated to consciousness? Because before the podcast, we were having a conversation about my interpretation of the Adam and Eve story was that the reason why they were expelled from the in heavenly garden from Eden, it depends on which way, was because they realized the truth of reality, which is the right and wrong. Because my concept is this: doesn't consciousness feel like a grave responsibility, and doesn't it also feel painful?
Well, offer us a parable. What somebody told me before, a very concrete example. This person is obviously spiritual. He told me that I have no objection to spirituality. My objection is the organized religion.
No, I cannot disagree.
So maybe the 85% is not people don't believe in a greater there. It's maybe they had some bad experiences with certain, not deities, but actual people.
Because I think everyone has had that moment in their younger childhood where that button, because for me it was
Generally, this is a person from the West, so that's what he explained to me. A lot of people think that the West is atheistic, but they're more like agnostic.
oh no,
yeah.
that is a misconception. I mean, it's a little bit more obvious now, but like I said, I'm sure everybody's had that memory where you are aware of yourself. For you, it was like looking at snow in New York, and I don't know why that moment, but that was for me the moment I was conscious. I had memories. I was aware of self, but that also came with great pain. Yes, because then that came with awareness of death, and when that self may one day perish.
Right, exactly. So consciousness is at the heart of it for sure. We are created as conscious beings for a reason, right? And it kind of circles back to your earlier question when you asked earlier on. I don't think we quite answered that. That do we go through, having found faith, is your faith ever shaken? Do you go through challenges? And I think we all do. And that's why these great divine teachers leave behind a whole bunch of resources to help you through that process. Because there's no growth without test. There's just none. When we get, we can say, well, I think I'm patient. Okay, I'm trying to acquire the virtue of patience, and we might even fool ourselves to believing it. But unless we get tested on patience, you should know how patient you are, right? And you go, how much more I need to work on this, or I need to work on creativity, I need to work on unity. I talk about unity, but I'm not really a better unity person.
Depends on how much coffee I had that day and what my mood is. To be frankly honest.
Religion has a lot to do with kinship and family. If you know the universal experience of humans, is that family affairs are the most difficult ones. You can deal with external. However, it comes from within. I think that's the most challenge.
Because every jab feels a little personal. Here you go. When your auntie and uncle's like, why are you like this? You're just like, ouch. It just hurts a little bit more.
Where's the door?
Yeah. But here's also another thing, though. Like, when it comes to the Baha'i faith, what happens when I ask this question a lot, obviously, but what happens?
We ask everyone so far. See, that's the whole religion thing, because we want to, share what our neighbors and different communities understand.
So the question of life after that?
Lap after that, what happens when we
Life after life? Yeah.
or what is the interpretation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because we believe there is a higher reality, and that this physical world, this physical reality is here for a reason, to help us grow to understand the higher reality. We eventually leave this world and we continue our journey to the higher reality. We call it the next world, we call it the next kingdom, whatever term one chooses to use doesn't matter. But the fact that a higher reality exists. Now, one analogy we are given in the Baha'i writings that help us understand this, because remember, this is a world of metaphors, and it provides examples of what you can imagine that reality to be, is the child in a mother's womb over here. So the example is given that way because all that separates that child from the next world, which is this world, is just a layer of skin. Right? All that separates that baby in the womb from this world. So what does the baby do? What is it actually doing? It is preparing to go into this new realm, a new dimension, whatever word you choose to use, because eventually it can't stay there forever. It needs to die to that world so it can be born in this world.
So this is we're in a womb, cocoon phase, whatever.
We are, it's one way of looking at it. So what we are doing here, we are asked to prepare for the next part of our journey. So imagine for a moment if the child decides, what use are these eyes? I don't need them. What's the point? I want to grow them. Because the child doesn't have a choice. But think of that analogy that way, extend it a little bit more. I don't need fingers. What's the purpose of the fingers in the womb? But remember, it's preparing for the next stage. So similarly, one can make a case that sometimes you hear people do that. What's the point of being kind and loving? I just got all the things that can amass all this wealth by shotgunning and riding my way through people and cheating people. Who cares? Look how wealthy I am. It's an example. Extreme. I don't need all these virtues. Why do I need them? You can make that argument. Because you've seen successful people who have the opposites of virtues.
No.
Right?
Too many.
Right? So you can make the case. But then the truth is, what are you going to amass all the wealth and where are you going to take it with you? I'm just using wealth as an example. It could be anything, knowledge, whatever, right? All the accumulation doesn't do much because has it helped you prepare for the next stage of your journey? Because your journey here is coming to an end. We've been dying since the day we were born, right?
That's the real.
So are we preparing for that? Have we done sufficiently to prepare? So one of the questions is, you're asking, which relates to this is, do we, what have we done to prepare for that, right? So we know how to prepare for the, material body in terms of, nourishment and all that. But what nourishment does the soul need so that it is healthy enough to continue the journey? That is the question. That's the answer that all the divine teachers have brought. They came here not so much, to say, these are the rules and regulations and these are the commandments which are important, but they really came first and foremost to remind. Baha'u'llah says is the first duty that he says is to remind us of our true nature. This is my mission, is to remind you of who you truly are, because you forget that. You think you're a material being and you live your life between your mind and your body, and you think that's good enough, completely eliminating the need for a soul, which can be, if allowed to, be a powerful force in our life. But if it is malnourished, if it is weak, it is not going to be able to instruct the mind to instruct the body. So you're playing a game between your mind and your body, and a mind can justify anything.
Well, yeah, of course.
Right? But it's untethered from good, capital G good. It runs with a small good, with a small G. And that small G can be justified either way. You talk to a Nabzi, if you can pull him up right now, travel back in time and say, hey, you guys think you're evil, killing 6 million Jews and all the other things that you did. Do you think that's evil? And he's going to say, no, I was doing it for the fatherland. I don't know, cleansing humanity, So that's good. That's small G good. So divorced from capital G good, which resides in your spirit. But your spirit, if it's malnourished because we've forgotten it and you haven't paid attention or nourished it, its voice becomes a very remote, quiet voice inside of us. And our mind's voice, our material voice, is the commanding one, right? It becomes louder. So that's the battle, that's a perpetual battle that we have. So the reason the manifestations of God, as Baha'is call them, or prophets or divine teachers, whatever term you use, every 1,000 years or so, one appears in the sequential order. Their job is to remind us of a higher nature and what you need to do to nourish it. And therefore, then the material life is balanced as individuals, as communities, as a global society. So when the Baha'i faith talks about one world civilization, which is materially and spiritually prosperous, is referring first and foremost to the transformation of the soul. That then affects our thinking, affects our actions. So, long story short, it's preparing for the next life. And the next life is real, it's timeless, it's spaceless, and it cannot disintegrate like the material one does.
So the soul is immortal.
Immortal, yes.
But it also kind of makes you question that. What does it look like? Because like you were saying, and I'm only getting this from this podcast. I have so many good ideas. Like you were saying, like when you're in the womb, you develop fingers, you develop eyes, nose, and so on and so forth. Is because in this world, you need those to pick up things, smell things, see things, right? So if the whole purpose of developing our soul is patience, no ego, no greed, no lust, what are we preparing for?
Once happy, that's the faith. But you see, if using that analogy in the womb, right, a baby cannot perceive what the next world is. That would be really weird if it could. But it does develop all the organs, all the faculties to allow it to live outside. I guess that's what this whole series about faith. Ultimately, I know.
True. But what I'm saying is that you have these clues, like just like if we were to take the scientific approach, you have these clues. You need eyes and fingers to see, to touch. So what would you need patience for? What would you need lack in the next life? What challenge dream of here?
What it is my understanding of it is it's quite simple actually. It's so if you like light, right? You want to be drawn towards light. You're always looking for light. You want to be drawn towards light. But if you have developed capacities that shies away from light, eventually you're going to meet the light. But if you have put yourself in a position that you haven't developed those capacities to want to be the presence of light, being in the presence of light is painful. Right? So when some people talk about hell as a fiery place and those metaphorical examples given, what hell can be greater than being in the only source of light in the next reality, and you cannot stand it? Because if you not,
oh my God.
It's not some place where you were dropped in and you never get out. You can control it, true, but it's your free will.
that's right, eh?
And I think that's the agency part. If God could determine everything, and he could, if in certain belief systems, God is all powerful, then what humans need to take will. I think that's the test part.
What you have to me? I'm glad you brought that. Is for me as well. The conundrum is I believe in fate, but where does free will come in fate? Because if everything is already preordained, like you and I met and that was meant to be, and there was never any free will at all.
Right, it's often you get this in most discussions about fate, predestination. This thing comes up, and I think it's a valid question, but it's worth exploring. My understanding is the idea that just because you know something is going to happen doesn't mean you are causing it to happen.
Oh, sir.
Right? So if you are the creator and you say, well, he knows everything, that's his essential quality. He's supposed to know everything. Future, past, present, doesn't matter. But his knowing it doesn't cause it to happen. That causing it to happen is our free will. Right? So we choose for things to happen or not. And all this that I've expressed right now are my personal opinions. And the only authoritative source for understanding the Baha'i faith are the Baha'i writings themselves. And in our case, the anything that we do not understand, we can always refer back to the institutions for clarity, and Baha'is have the option to ask questions from local level right up to global level, right? So no, that from the inception of the faith, the Bab himself and eventually Baha'u'llah too, forbade any form of clergy, any form of religious leadership invested in individuals.
Oh, so there's no clergy. Clergy. And then I was just trying to think about a more general word for it, but yeah, then clergy feels Catholicism.
Feels very. I don't think it's religious though. It's just like, I mean, we got to choose the just English language.
I was just trying to be nice and
I think a longer form would be professional religious people. That's your job.
professional religious people.
That's all we do.
Politically correct term. Are you a priest? No, I'm a professionally religious person.
I'm a man of faith in the management position.
Oh yeah, that's it. There's something. Can you answer that question? No, you got to talk to a CEO.
But there's some. But how is it organized there?
So because we don't have clergy, what we have are institutions. Again, it was spelled out and the template was given to us how to organize ourselves by Baha'u'llah himself. They're called assemblies, spiritual. You have local spiritual assemblies, you have national spiritual assemblies, and then you have the universal hospitals. There are 9, wherever in a given location, society, there are more than 9 adult Baha'is.
Okay.
Then you can form a local spiritual assembly because a membership in the assembly requires 9 individuals.
9.
There's no campaigning, there's no electioneering, there's none of that. The criteria is completely different in the voting process. So it's democratically voted, and the voting takes place in a prayerful, meditative, silent environment where the criteria we're looking for is given to us by the Abdul Baha, but eventually by his oldest grandson, Shungi Effendi, who passed away in 1950 and and he was kind of the architect of our structures, our institutional structures. And he said these are the criteria we're looking for in an individual. It's humility, knowledge, service, patience, and all these qualities we're talking about, right? So you see that reflected in someone. And that's what you're looking for in somebody to be one of the 9 members of the local spiritual assembly or national spiritual assembly. So we have different layers of administration in terms of how they are elected. So we send delegates to elect the National Spiritual Assembly. National Spiritual Assembly, all 9 of them around the world, 180 odd countries. Then every 5 years going elect the Universal House of Business. That's the structure. And then that is the what we call the elected arm of the faith. Then there's something called the appointed arm of the faith, right? So the appointed arm of the faith are more advisory, counseling, and also they call counselors and auxiliary board members. And so there's that as appointed by the house, and the counselors then appoint the board members are appoint the assistants. So there goes again local, national, international level. And they don't have any authority, like I said, but they are advisory and counseling, and they're very well respected and loved by the Bahá'í community. The authority to make decisions rests in the elected institutions.
Are you part of this committee? Sorry,
The assembly, yeah. The assembly, sorry, for Penang, yes. Yeah.
Where do they worship? Place of worship.
Oh, the place of worship. So in terms of community life, so we have temples around the world where they're called the continental temples, which in every continent there's one. And then now the Baha'i world has embarked on a number of, I lost count, national and local temples. So the local and national temples that are being built or already built. And then at local levels, we meet at friends' homes, Like in Penang, we have, because of the municipality, right, we have Barat Daya and Timor Laut.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, so Berangsaan, you got 3.
Yeah.
So here, Timor Laut, it so happens we invested and bought a center many years ago, Lincoln Bartley Road. And so that, it serves as a center for joint activities. Rather than that, during feast, like we spoke about 19-day feast, that takes place most of the time in neighborhoods. The laws that I just mentioned are part of the laws that are found in what is known as the most holy book in the Bahá'í faith, known as the Kitab-i-Aqdas. There is another book which is also known as the Kitab-i-Iqan, which is the book of certitude, which talks about progressive revelation. But the laws are all found in the Aqdas. And this law and among other laws are there. And these laws are being, they're not applicable, all of them right now. They are being gradually made applicable by the universe now, so this case, based on the evolution society.
So it evolves, right?
The laws don't, but the enforcement of it or the application of it becomes released one at a time over time.
We were interviewing other people of faith before this. There is a certain evolution of, and I don't mean the religion evolves. I meant, like, for example, whether it's some ceremonies where the younger masses nowadays in 2026 don't participating, which was a problem on some faiths, or some might not follow certain teachings, having their hair in a certain way or they're dressing in a certain way as what is supposed to, and then that's what I'm curious about in terms of the Baha'i faith. Was there ever an evolution of that in 2026 where you're just like, young people are just not into I mean, the challenges the faith has in keeping its identity, its spirituality in 2026 or 2025. I mean, it is so new.
Yeah, that was a great question. Actually, how relevant is it in today's reality?
Yeah.
Right. 2 things. One is the faith itself is, because Baha'is believe that the laws and the teachings brought by Baha'u'llah is the will of God himself. So therefore, it's a template for living, right? So if your designer and your creator says, hey, this is what you need for now, compared to 1,000 years from 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years prior to that, the social conditions were different, and the different divine teachers who came provided teachings that were suitable for the time. And which is why they all say, each one of them, I will be back. It wasn't just Arnold.
Okay.
Right, or was it every 1,000 years? About a thousand. That's a few hundred years to 1,000 years. Right? And the reason is because the evolution of society and the changing needs. But in the closer term, no. I mean, the faith does not modify itself to fit the current reality, because it says that these teachings is mindful of the changes. It's always asking us to read your reality and create plans and activities and services that speak to this reality. We're always asked to do that by the universal house teachers and even the central figures. But that doesn't mean we compromise the laws of the faith, right? So the laws of the faith are the laws of the faith because they come from the designer. It's like, if you buy a Toyota, you want to get your manual from the manufacturer of Toyota, not Daihatsu.
Why would you?
Right? Because that's the most relevant thing. Yeah. So all these books, the holy books that were brought to us, whether it's the Gita or the Quran, all these are manuals how to live your life here. And as the Bab says in one of his writings, he says, we have been given free will.
Yeah.
But he says the only legitimate use of that free will is to align your will with his will.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's quite a concept.
Right? So whatever we do, let's say, I am flying, I love flying drones. I'm capturing something. It could be just purely a pastime, but I'm doing it with the intention of, sharing some of the beauty of God's nature with others.
Oh, yeah.
So I can connect it to a deeper meaning, or I can choose not to. That's my choice, right? But if I see it that way, something happens. Now I'm framing the shot a little bit differently. I'm more intentful.
Yeah.
I'm being more purposeful in my approach.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to come from a deeper place. You just fulfill that goal. Or it could be purely on the surface. Doesn't matter. Yeah. But then, you get to explore your potential when you go a little deeper.
Speaking of beauty, I think you can give some insights where few of us had the chance when you are out in the deep ocean Was there anything that made you like, oh, like I'm so small or something?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons I got into to amateur astronomy is my experience in the ocean, being at sea. Imagine being an 18-year-old and you're out there in the middle of the Pacific or Atlantic, wherever, far away from city lights. It's very hard to get a clear, dark sky night anywhere near the city. Especially one in Malaysia where it's a bit dense population, the population density is so high. In Canada and other places where it's a bit more sparse, it's a little bit easier. If you can go to countryside, we see just beautiful dark skies, right? But in the ocean, it's complete darkness. In the Pacific, you're like 50 miles off the coast of any country, you're already in a place of complete darkness at night. And the stars come out. And they can blow your mind away, especially if you have what's known as force zero wind, where there's just no wind at all. And when you have no wind, the water is calm like a mirror. Oh my God. Okay, so now you have the sky filled with stars, and then you can hardly tell the horizon because it's like they meet at some point, the sky and the sea, and you cannot open the glass.
Wow. Right? It's like it's a mirror to a sky, so we have two skies in a way.
It's a mirror, and you're just blown away. And those moments, you're right. You can feel both so small and insignificant. And as Baha'u'llah says in one of his writings, do you consider yourself a puny form when within you the universe is folded? So as small as we are, as tiny as we are, we have the capacity, the consciousness to contemplate upon this reality. And since we are part of the universe, we are essentially stardust materially. That has been given consciousness. We are the reason the universe has consciousness, is able to contemplate on itself. Without our consciousness, the universe just is. But again, that's how precious we are.
That's quite a burden.
So we're gonna end with that.
If electricity symbolizes modernity, I think that's what we miss now, the awe part, because so much light. People back then, they basically look at the sky, oh, I'm so small. You're gonna now like, wait, when was the last time you look at the sky?
That's touche. This is what we're doing. We're doing this. If you put this away and that up.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, in my defense, I do watch a lot of documentary to further my.
There is an innate hunger for that, right?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, like we like to end all these special World Religion Day series. It's like, is there anything you want to share from your faith with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, in closing, and especially with the theme of how spirituality can bring about a vibrant and united Penang, and the role of religion in this process, is what I think could help every one of us is if we try and in the process of growth, sometimes challenge our perspectives, because part of growth requires challenging ourselves. And one of the perspectives I would like to suggest we have a reimagining or relook at is the idea that all faith, sometimes we get the question, people say, there's one God, why so many religions? Why so much confusion? Now, what the Baha'i writings, what Baha'u'llah has given us is this lens with which to see a lot of human affairs and religious affairs. And one of it being called progressive revelation. You take the lens of progressive revelation, and it gives you the clarity for why all these religions, why so many. There is an evolutionary process to these religions. And each one of them came at a particular time to a particular society with a particular mission. And they say that the process doesn't end, which is why each one of them, from Moses to Jesus, all of them, they say that there are more to the teachings. Like Jesus said that I had more to say unto you, but you cannot bear them now. However, when he returns, he says, he will reveal you more truth. And that's not because they are not capable. It's because our capacities in its evolutionary process was limited at each stage. And as we acquire more capacities, we have the ability to absorb these teachings, like the concept of heaven and hell at one point. And the kind of heaven and hell we're talking about today, we see as evolution or the attempt to make it more relevant today, even in the churches, right? The idea in certain churches, you find is evolving. And similarly, in all religious faith, trying to make it current. But because there's no central understanding, you have variety of opinions coming up, sometimes causing more confusion. And what the Baha'i faith says is that that's all part of our infant stage of evolution. So humanity now, the Baha'u'llah says, is in a stage of what you can call in social settings, in the social reality, is in its adolescent stage. So you've gone through, collectively, humanity has gone through what is analogous to an individual. We go through an infant stage, we go through a child stage, we go through a junior youth stage, and then a youth, and then you're adolescent. You're not an adult yet, but you're almost there. So all this crazy confusion and wars and greed, all these things that you are seeing is an outcome, is a manifestation of this confusing adolescent stage. It's trying to find its identity. It's trying to find, who am I? Humanity collectively. And Baha'u'llah says, these teachings that God has given to you through me now, for the next 1,000 years, after which there'll be another teacher. He says, but that is for you now. He says, take this lens and look at the world and try. It'll help you make sense. Like, another teaching is the equality of men and women. Gender equality, it's there. Most people say, yeah, but then you find arguments and debates and division in this subject matter. What Baha'u'llah has brought to millions of Baha'is around the world and your friends is this concept that, no, in the sight of the Creator, you are equal in terms of responsibilities, in terms of capacities. Yeah, your roles might be different, but that doesn't make one above the other, And so there's that understanding. And similarly, science and religion and many other things. It allows us to look at reality and re-examine with a new lens, right? So maybe I'll end with this. An easy to remember analogy or concept is that if you think of the teachers, the divine teachers who've, since Adam right up to now, as teachers in a school. You go to grade 1. You have your grade 1 teacher. The grade 1 teacher can teach you algebra, but he's not going to. He's going to give you according to your capacity. He's putting the building blocks so that you can graduate and go to grade 2, standard 2. You go to standard 2, you cannot say, I only want my standard 1 teacher. Standard 2 teacher is going to help you. And they are together in this. They are in the same school with one principle. So as they help you move along to finally get your graduation, they are working in synchronicity. They are working together so that you get to this place of maturity and say, okay, we are adult enough to create this human society of global society, a global civilization that is both materially and spiritually prosperous. Right? You can get that. That's why I like Star Trek.
Oh, same. All right.
So that's the
If humanity has reached adolescence, are we going to be tested with calculus soon?
Maybe you develop the work plan first. We'll see what happens.
Wow, there's a good conversation. What do you think, Mo?
I think that I don't know. Today in this series of podcasts up until now has really opened my mind to a lot of things, And when it comes to the Baha'i religion specifically, it is rather intriguing how it encapsulates a lot of the concepts that we take for granted in modern times, because that's what I feel in my own personal complexity with my own faith, where I'm just doesn't, there's a certain thing where I'm just like, it's a little outdated, So this one feels more up to date, but I think what attracts me is the pursuit of treating work as worship and the global citizen. For me, I don't know, that feels right, for lack of a better word, and I really appreciate you coming in and providing that intellectual, personal, as well as anecdotal perception of the religion, in my honest opinion.
Oh, that's what I think. I don't know. What do you think? Well, thanks a lot. I think we had a very good day today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And this has been another episode of People of Penang. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great conversation, man. Great conversation. Oh,